welcome back. I'm here with Olaf Kordes and remotely with Alain Kinsch to talk to you about the future of private equity in Luxembourg. Moin Alain, wie geht es?
Alles gut, bei dir?
Okay, we miss you here on stage, but I have Olaf next to me, and I hope we make this as interactive as possible to discuss private equity in the future or for the next decade. I'm not going to introduce you both very much. I just want to say that both of you are very distinguished private equity experts. And Alain, since you're the oldest in terms of experience, not in terms of age, and that everybody knows you, I'm going to start by introducing Olaf, who's just come back to Luxembourg after over 25 years of absence. Olaf, you joined Luxempart as the co-managing director recently. You've been away for a quarter of a century because you had to leave Luxembourg for your studies. And now you're back to do more deals because you've been essentially a GP all this time.
Yes, absolutely. I've had the chance to invest throughout Europe over the last 20 years, mainly in a private equity fund called Alpha, and I wanted to go back to Luxembourg. I felt that the positioning of the company I have the honor to represent, Luxempart, is a very good strategy under the constraints of the markets which are changing, and so I felt it was very much adequate to come back to the country.
Well, welcome back. And Alain, so now back to you. You recently left the position of a country managing partner at EY, and you haven't quite left because I can recognize that you're still in the office there. But we're also happy to have you today, not only because of your extensive expertise as also the European lead for private equity, or EMEA lead, not only Europe, at EY, but also because you sit on different commissions. You sit also on the Council of the State of Luxembourg, which basically advises the government on laws. So it's really amazing that today you can give us your insights. And unless I missed something, I'd like to go straight into the first question for you. Can you tell us where you see the single biggest opportunity for Luxembourg to really become the global hub for PE over the next decade? And why would you pick this particular opportunity, if at all?
Well, thank you, Rajaa. Hi, Olaf. Really good to be with you, even remotely. Well, I would say, first of all, we are here in an industry, private equity, which is set to further big growth. Because when we speak about the opportunity for Luxembourg, we first want to know where this industry is heading, because there's no point in trying to grow in an industry which is not set to grow. And that is exactly what we're going to have in private equity. Let me give you one figure. There are currently more than 800 billion of dry powder that has increased by about 100 billion over the last 6 months, even in the crisis situation. So this industry is going to grow because it is where investors are going to look for returns. Now, this means more and more funds being created. And I think the single biggest opportunity for Luxembourg really remains, in my view, to become the #1 fund center for private equity in the world. I mean, this is a long way. I mean, Delaware, of course, is far ahead. But I think there's massive growth opportunities which are there in what we really know to do, which is basically the management of funds. Now, obviously, we talk a lot about moving along the value chain and attracting more front-office activities. I guess we will speak about that a bit later. But I would say the biggest opportunity for now, in my view, in the few years to come, is to really grow the share of the market we have in the private equity fund business.
Mm-hmm. Well, I asked you about the single biggest one, but is there a second one, second biggest?
Yes, I think the second biggest is to move along the value chain. Mm-hmm. We started off by being 20 years ago a center for purely structuring cross-border acquisitions by funds located elsewhere. Then we attracted the funds together with some of the teams here to Luxembourg. A lot of the GPs today have many boots on the ground and are doing far more than just back office. So we're moving up to the middle office. Now, I think clearly, of course, we all dream that we're going to have the full value chain in Luxembourg. Now, I don't think that in the near term, we're going to see deal teams based here in Luxembourg, with obviously a couple of exceptions. However, I think there's a big opportunity to attract the investor relations services here to Luxembourg, also in the context of Brexit, with one of the ladies in the previous sessions had already mentioned. And second, I also think that part of the deal execution, that means the data room with everything around, could be done here in Luxembourg. There's no reason to do it necessarily somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree on the exceptions of a GP deal team sitting in Luxembourg, but if you think it's an exception, let's talk to the first exception sitting here with me, because Olaf, you actually moved back here to do deals. You're a front office deal team maker, right?
Yes, of course, but the way we consider actually the setup of Luxempart is basically what we always say is the factory is here, but the salesmen are elsewhere. I think a lot of people actually cover Europe out of London. We'll see, and I think the next panel will show whether this is going to be the case in the coming years as well. But so covering a country, a foreign market out of London, there's no reason why we couldn't be able to do it out of Luxembourg. I mean, infrastructure, even though it can always be improved, is quite good. I mean, you can travel easily to the major markets in Europe. There's no point. So it's only about attracting the talent and creating really this hub you were mentioning.
I think we'll come back to that. Alain, you mentioned how the value chain has been growing and evolving in Luxembourg. Can you comment again about how you would describe this PE opportunity to outsiders with hashtag Made in Luxembourg, which we all try to promote at LPA, at LFF, and at many different levels? So you're talking about domiciliation, you're talking about investor relations, about deal structuring, data room. If someone means front office, what would you tell them today and for the next 5 to 10 years? Also, as Olaf said, in the context of Brexit.
Yes, Rajaa. I think the first thing is that we have really created over the past couple of years a real ecosystem here in Luxembourg. So when you come as a private equity practitioner to Luxembourg, you're not going to feel alone, and you're not going to feel that you are in a place where the focus is on something else. I mean, in Luxembourg, we have a real ecosystem where you feel at home when you work in private equity. Now, the key attraction point, really, I think, is what Luxembourg offers is it offers planning certainty. So there are many risks which you need to deal with in private equity. And what you don't want to have and you don't need is risk at a level of regulation laws. In Luxembourg, you can, in general, assume that you have certainty with regard to the structures which are set up. And that's a key strength in all the areas of private equity. And then the second one I would say is innovation. If you come to Luxembourg as a private equity practitioner, you can actually be somebody who helps to shape the private equity industry in Luxembourg through participating in the dialogue with the government, with the regulators, through the associations. And the industry is basically implicated in this constant search for new tools, new ways of doing, and for excellence. And I think that's something which probably in some larger countries, just to the sheer size, is more difficult, but also because Luxembourg has a culture of working together with the industry on a constant strive for innovation and improvement.
Let's ask Olaf if he agrees with you, because he's the proof in the pudding. Olaf, what have you encountered when you arrived back here after 25 years of absence? I forgot to say you actually grew up in Luxembourg, so schwätzt ihr Lützeburgisch?
Natürlich schwätzen Sie Lützeburgisch. No, should we continue in English?
Yes,
I was actually very proud because I held my first 2-hour meeting in Luxembourgish yesterday, because people keep switching back to French, and I say, no guys, if you want my Luxembourgish to become more fluid again, you need to let me speak Luxembourgish. And they said, well, we need to improve our French, which is obviously totally wrong. But no, I mean, I fully agree with Alain, especially when you look a little bit with hindsight and experience. I think one of the most important factors for attracting private equity industry in the world is actually stability and a very common sense and business mindedness. And I think that Luxembourg creates this environment because there is a lot of stability. people, when they get elected, do not tend to have as first idea to undo everything that has been done in the last 5 years, which creates a lot of stability and hence attractiveness. We're hiring, we are trying to get people to Luxembourg because once again the factory is here. As soon as you get in-depth discussion with the candidates, this is one of the key things we put forward because it is really something very important.
So first, very important thing. So first you're saying that there are jobs in private equity, front office, deal making in Luxembourg that you're trying to fill.
Yes.
And second, that you are trying to find the right candidates. So your experience has been that it's easy to do so or not? Because I also wanted to understand the deficit. You seem to be excited coming back, but
well, I'm excited.
Perfect?
I grew up here. I do not have the hurdle to think about myself going to Luxembourg. I mean, to be totally transparent, I think that younger people especially, well, they dream of Paris, they dream of London, they unfortunately don't really dream of Luxembourg, which is actually a paradox because if you look at a number of studies which have been done, including with MBA students, they place Luxembourg within the 10 first countries in the world most desirable to set up business in, and even among the 5 largest or best placed countries in Europe.
But this is across the board or just in financial services?
No, it's where the people want to work.
In general?
Yes, of course. So, I mean, they recognize somehow that Luxembourg has a lot to offer. But nevertheless, it's changing too slowly. And I think one of the deficits is we need to communicate more about the attractiveness of Luxembourg as a hub for business.
Alain, you sit on the Haut Comité de la Place Financière, which is this high-level commission at a national level to push for alternative investment funds. Tell us about what are we doing so that in the next 10 years we become the hub for young talent as well?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Rajaa, because talent is really the key to basically almost everything in financial services here in Luxembourg. And so this is not only an initiative for private equity. I think it's in general an initiative which the Haut Comité is pushing forward to make Luxembourg more and more attractive for talent. So that includes everything around training. So there are discussions with the University of Luxembourg to see what more can be done in terms of attractive courses. This is around having partnership with schools, universities outside. It is about flight connections. It is about English-speaking schools. It is about taxation. So I think really all the good things which we know, but obviously I think very much also about marketing and about selling. And I think you can see already some of the campaigns, for example, of Olaf and others, which try to market and to sell and Luxembourg, or to put it very positively, just to raise awareness. And as Olaf said, I mean, there's a lot Luxembourg has to offer, but as it is so small and very often still unknown, we can never underestimate the crucial importance of always repeating and telling the story of Luxembourg and giving also examples of good success stories of people who came to Luxembourg and feel that they have here a great environment to do a good career.
But I want to stop you there because I think from my perspective, having been here 5 years, it's important to pause and realize the progress and the achievements that have been made. We're always looking at what we could do better. So let's do a little bit of a flashback. Olaf, when you were growing up here, 15, 16, 18-year-old, and you, Alain, when you got your first job, how was Luxembourg then in general and for PE? And what has been achieved? What were the drivers of this success, and what should we keep from these drivers for the next 10 years? So Olaf, tell us your memory of the country.
When I was 16, I think even Mr. Kravitz wasn't yet thinking about buying Nabisco, so I'm not sure. But no, frankly speaking, I mean, the first difficulty at the time was basically people after finishing high school had to leave because there was no university. This is one of the many achievements that Luxembourg has done, and I have a friend of mine who actually graduated the same year as I did, and now she is one of the major professors in the biology department here after having spent most of her career in Cambridge. So, I mean, it's a little bit out of perspective, but nevertheless, I mean, so even highly regarded university professors come to the university, which is one of the key elements because people do not have to leave necessarily if they want to go to university, and hence you don't really need to bring them back, because once you leave, obviously, then it's much easier to say, well, I went to business school
But
in
you're
France.
a living example of the
Yes,
idea
but
of
it's
coming
been
back.
25 years
That's
later.
okay.
Of course,
Now you
yes,
come
but
back with the real expertise.
yes, but coming back to what Alain said, I think there has been a great job done creating the right vehicles to attract private equity funds to Luxembourg now 15, 20 years ago. Moving up the value chain to the middle office is great. If you want attractive front offices, and there is no reason why you shouldn't be able to do so, you need to be able actually to bring in younger talents, because no private equity fund wants to recruit partners at that stage. You want to grow the internal talents. Well, my story is, it's Luxempart, sorry, is extremely dynamic, so they had to beef up the team, and the thing is, the ideal way is to grow talent from the outstart, i.e. younger people. Sometimes you need to take some shortcuts, and I was very lucky to be such a shortcut.
Alain, what has changed since you started work in Kirchberg?
Well, when I started working here, I would be sitting in the middle of the cows, basically, because there was nothing except the European Parliament. But from a private equity perspective, I remember when I started in 95, I kind of fell into private equity since the first month by pure coincidence, and there were only 30 funds. Luxembourg was just purely a place for acquisitions, for structuring acquisition, and that's it, basically. I think that everything has changed, and as Olaf said, I think there's so much which has been done in terms of making Luxembourg an attractive place, in terms of culture, in terms of going out, in terms of things happening, and just having a very young population. I mean, in the company where I'm in EY, we have an average age of 30 years, more or less. I mean, and it's the same for our colleagues. So it's very young, it's very vibrant, it's small but vibrant, multicultural. And in private equity, I think what has really changed is that in 95, when I started, and you spoke to somebody about private equity, people in Luxembourg, I mean, no offense to anybody, but most people had no clue what you were talking about. And those who had a clue what you were talking about were seeing it not necessarily as something so positive, because it was very much mixed up with hedge funds. People were thinking, this is like job killers and over leveraging. And I think LPEA, before LPEA, the EVCA and Invest Europe have done, Rajaa, I think, really fantastic job in explaining what private equity is, that it is about value creation, about job creation. And so there has been all this explanation that actually private equity is doing good for your economy. And I think our government, at least in Luxembourg, since now many years, understood this and are positively inclined towards private equity. And I think this is not a given, because it was not like this, and still it is not like this in many countries. And I think that has been a fantastic achievement over the last 20 years, I think.
No, I think it's a great overview of the past. So let's be very concrete and action-oriented for the young talent watching us. What is Luxembourg doing and is going to do to attract the young talent from across Europe? And since the next panel is about Brexit, I just want to say the B word. Are we going to try to attract talent from London relocating here, which depends, of course, on GPs also domiciliating more of their teams here? And Olaf, what are you doing exactly to hire these young deal-making guys here and bring them to Luxembourg?
Well, we try to convince them that they are potentially joining a very dynamic company which is open for business. We're lucky to have made 2 private equity investments this year, plus a number of other ones under unhappy circumstances. So it's very clear that our shareholders are very much committed to deploying capital and hence being active, which is one key point of attraction, because, I mean, we're not getting younger, but when we think back to 2008, a number of private equity professionals didn't know where they were going, because basically they were just saying, well, okay, but I mean, there is no opportunity anymore. So it's very important actually to tell them that the players, or some of the players at least, are very much open for business. That's the first thing. Then getting them to Luxembourg is basically just inviting them, trying to tell them and trying to convince them that there is a really positive business environment, and that they can, yes, they can live in a city or in a country which is extremely dynamic, which has done a lot for its population over the last 15, 20 years.
So in the case of PE, you bring them to the LPA, you introduce them to the team, you take them to a couple of bars when they open again?
I try not to, because I leave that to the younger people to convince them on that side. But no, I think it's about the business environment. Second point is also about, obviously, the living environment. But no.
But I think you're talking about front office jobs, and there is this general understanding that there are not many front office jobs here. Maybe with funds it's still the case, but that's changing. I would like to comment that when it comes to LPs like private banks, family offices, the jobs are increasing, but like everything in PE, even with in London or Paris, you have to network in the right places to get a job. And yes, there are headhunters who offer you jobs, but I never found a job through a headhunter. So Alain, more generally, Olaf gave the example of Luxempart and what they're doing. What are we doing on a more macro level to attract all these front office talent who are actually keen to maybe move here but don't know what's going on and where the opportunities are?
Yeah, let me say first, I mean, I fully agree with Olaf on the fact that people come here really for the business environment first. And there we have critical mass in private equity. I think that is really key, the fact that there is really a critical mass and ecosystem. I mean, if I just look at our firm, we have 400 people working in private equity. I mean, that's massive, even on a global scale. So by just making that very statement of saying we have 400 people working in private equity, and you do that when you go and you recruit in universities in Europe or outside of Europe, I mean, that's already gives you a lot of credibility and legitimacy for Luxembourg. Now, on a macro level, I think that clearly what we are trying to do, and I say we, I think probably all those of us, the many of us who are trying to promote Luxembourg, is basically to help our people facilitate the relocation to Luxembourg. I think what we know that finding a place to live is not necessarily so easy. And then people might have heard some war stories of people who had trouble to find places at attractive prices. So as an employer and as somebody who wants to attract people, you know, we need to help people find that, and there are different ways of doing that. So that's for example one very concrete example. A second one, I think on the macro level, is having privileged relationships with certain universities around the globe, where professors and other people at the university are actually marketing Luxembourg, and they are sensibilizing their people that there is interesting careers for them in Luxembourg. So I think the fact it's one thing for us to go out and sell Luxembourg. It's also important that the key people outside Luxembourg, they are ambassadors for us too.
Yep. You mentioned earlier, Olaf, the necessity also to show a sustainable environment, stable. Why do you feel it's so stable, and compared to Paris or wherever you worked in the past?
Good question.
But you feel that's what you keep saying.
You want the politically correct answer?
No, I want your real answer.
It's basically Luxembourg has the structure like I would tend to say any other country should have, but some of them do not, unfortunately. No, I think it's also we have a great advantage being a smaller country, and hence it's probably more easy and especially to keep the dialogue open between business and government is probably easier in a state like Luxembourg rather than in larger countries. But on the other hand side, I think also it's part of the culture. People do not want to disrupt things here, and that's a very positive,
and that's what will attract GPs then. And LPs.
As I said, once again, I mean, you can cover out of London. Why shouldn't you be able to cover out of Luxembourg? I mean, going to Paris is a no-brainer as long as SNCF gets into post-COVID mood. To Germany is maybe a little bit more complex. Most people I know have to drive there. So you can improve the infrastructure, but there's no reason why you shouldn't be able. And I think also what the unfortunate health situation has shown us is that you can work from a more distant location. As Alain mentioned, doing due diligence out of here, because you're only sitting anyway in a virtual data room, is no point. And there's actually an advantage. If you're on the more mature markets, such as France, Germany, and so on, everybody knows that an asset is coming up for sale. If you want to do it a little bit further and you start working with consultants on it, well, there's always the problem of a potential leak. If you live in a smaller country, or maybe if you do your due diligence in Luxembourg, even looking at a French, German, Belgian asset, there might be an additional layer of confidentiality, which can be actually welcome if you have to move quickly and in a confidential manner.
No, and I experience also personally more and more deal sourcing out of Luxembourg, people stopping by to meet other people that they can actually invest with. Alain, I'm sure you have the same experience. What about the RCPF? Because I think the RIFE, which is this huge success story of the last 2-3 years, has been created thanks to a critical ingredient that's unique to Luxembourg as well, and explain its stability.
Yeah, I think the RIFE is one example amongst others, which, if I might say so, came out of the HCPF. I think that we have the chance that the Minister of Finance is using that body as a real innovation and think tank. And the RIFE is a good example of something which has been pushed by members of the HCPF in collaboration with the government, with the CSSF and others. So, and that's exactly, this is a never-ending story. So today is the RIFE, tomorrow it will be something else. I think it's always being à l'écoute of the profession of the private equity industry and trying to respond in a reasonable way to their requests. And I think that's a good example of what Luxembourg really is about. I would add one more element, Rajaa, which is the fact that you're really in a multicultural environment. For us, for you, for Olaf, for me, for all of us, that's kind of normal, right? But if you are in Paris, I mean, nothing against Paris. I mean, I studied there for 5 years. I love the city. But Paris is very Parisian, right? I mean, it's very French. And you have more chances to meet French people on the road than you have to meet people from other countries. Whereas in Luxembourg, if you are on the road, you meet 10 people. I mean, 9 out of the 10, they will not be from Luxembourg City. Yeah. So it's just the experience you get in terms of cultural openness, practicing your languages. This is very attractive to many, many young people. Now, it's not attractive to everybody, but I think it's also a good natural way of selection, because we attract people with an open mind to Luxembourg. And I think that's a real strength.
So I think we have a very good list of reasons why the future of Luxembourg, of private equity, is in Luxembourg. So we should correct the title. Beside the international side, the stability, the public-private partnership, the fact that more and more front office jobs are being offered here. But of course, nothing replaces being on-site. So I would encourage anyone watching us who hasn't been here to come. And I want to leave Olaf as the latest comer to Luxembourg with the word of the end. What would you like to tell young talent watching us to make sure that the future of private equity is in Luxembourg?
Sorry to give a French reference, but there was a very quite well-known film, Les Ch'tis, where they always said when people come to the north of France, they cry twice, once when they arrive and once when they have to leave. And you could very well apply this to Luxembourg as well. Getting to know it is getting to love it.
Wow, powerful statement. Alain, anything you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I think Olaf's, that was a very beautiful statement, Olaf. Let's keep that like this. I'm not going to be able to top that one.
Well, so good luck in the rest, and thank you all. And I think now we have Brexit, and I'm just going to pass the word back to the CEO of LPA, Stefan. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks.